The scale of just how much the government owes today is breathtaking. The equivalent of $10,000 for every man, woman, and child. $50,000 in debt for each family of 5. The inconceivable total sum of $4.2 billion. That's the number 4. That's the number 4, followed by 9 digits.
Government revenue from tax collection and other services for 2020 fell by more than 28% of what was projected, according to the Prime Minister's presentation. On the other hand, government spending increased.
This is the crux of the exigency we face, and it cannot be overemphasized. The amount we have been collecting fell by a significant amount, almost a third of what we used to collect. Notably, amidst the cuts and reductions in spending in various sectors, wages to public workers actually rose by $11 million, or 2.5%.
Government's 2020 revenue was 8% less than what was needed to meet expenses. Under Briceño's administration, the government of Belize decided that under its homegrown economic plan, it would cut the wage bill and other expenditures with the intentions of changing that deficit to a surplus over the next 3 years. The International Monetary Fund agrees this is a feasible approach.
In the case of fiscal consolidation, we are recommending to increase the primary balance from a deficit of 8.4% of GDP in fiscal year 2020 to a surplus of 3% of GDP in fiscal year 2024. A big part of that we expect to come from a cyclical recovery of revenue. When you look at the revenue of the government, you're going to see that revenue to GDP declined by 4.5 percentage points of GDP. Or put in different terms, revenue declined by more than 25% in 2020, while GDP declined by about 14%. So the revenue to GDP ratio basically declined. And we expect those revenues to come back gradually and to get back to pre-pandemic levels in 2 or 3 years from now.
While the I.M.F. believes that Belize's government does in fact need to address its ballooning wage bill and expenditures, it also recommends the government increases its revenues by broadening its tax base.
Belize has a standard rate for the gross sale tax that is 12.5%, but then it has several items, a large group of items that they are taxed at the 0 rate. We don't believe that all those items are a first necessity for poor households. And therefore, some of them could actually be moved from, instead of having them taxed at the 0 rate, to be taxed at the standard rate. And that would bring revenue.
A technical assistance report from 2012 estimates that Belize forgoes 5% of GDP on 0-rated items. And while the government does not include this recommendation in its so-called homegrown economic plan, it agrees with the I.M.F. that there is a need to improve Belize's business climate to promote private investment.
Government and all stakeholders, especially the public service and the private sector, must together seed and reap higher, more equitable economic growth. Enabling investment, both domestic and foreign, is of the highest priority for this administration. For this year, the I.M.F. forecasts only a modest GDP rebound of 1.9%, with a steep upswing of 6.4% projected for 2022. Their prediction is that a return to pre-COVID economic activity will not occur until financial year 2024-2025 period. While we are more optimistic, contingency plans will be at the ready in the event that the rebound is protracted.
Reporting for News 5, I am Paul Lopez.